Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So I don't know if I'm going to release this or not, but I wanted to talk about it. So we just came back from a meeting with the primary school. You know, as you know, my daughter Lena is autistic. It's only mild autism, according to the paediatrician, and it only seems very mild, but it does affect her speech and language and communication. And she's only been at reception for 4 or 5 weeks, and they were going through the plan that we agreed, and they kept saying things like, oh, is she overwhelmed and this, that and the other, whereas she hasn't showed any signs of overwhelmment. Her teacher hasn't ever mentioned anything like that. Yeah, she'll have moments where she doesn't like crying, or moving on to a different thing because she wants to do whatever she wants to do. In fact, really, she's like the perfect human being in a way, because she's not considered as everyone else, whereas everyone else is very malleable, and that's how they soak up the information and get taught. And in children, they look for that malleability, but in reality, it's actually better, human being, to not be malleable, to stick to your guns and do what you want to do. But not in the world we live in. But yeah, anyway, so they were talking about her doing less hours because they think it's overwhelming for her, but there doesn't seem to be any sign that she needs to be happy. It's just she's not doing what they want to do. But they can't expect that, because any child who's disabled or has autism, they're not going to function in the same way, and they need to be have a different pattern. You can't expect them to do A, B and C like the children that don't have disability or autism. But that's the problem, is the whole system, the whole schooling for years has been dedicated to this, I don't know using the term, but the term normal, whatever normal is. Children that will just do as they're told and, follow the system, the majority of how children are. And that's how schooling works, and the funding works in the same way. This is the thing, they were saying that they kept saying she needs an assigned person, but she can't get an assigned person until they do 3 lots of these analyses over, 3 terms is that? And then they can request for funding, and then they will decide. They even mentioned about going to a special school. She's only mild autistic. They're already trying to scare us into the idea of a special school because they wanted us to take reduced hours, but I don't see why, because we were talking in the thing about, she needs to familiarise herself with a person, and it took her time in nursery. Well, they actually did really well, but it took her time to get used to and follow instructions and this, that and the other, because that's the nature of autism, this disability. It has that nature of where it's difficult for structure. So to make a guideline that if you don't follow this, then, well, that's the problem, this idea of the system being geared to this old-fashioned system of every child has to follow this way, even though we know that disability and autistic children won't be able to do that. So you should, by now, autism has been known for 60 years? Disability since time began. So even now we still not have a system, and I'm sure my case is very mild compared to people who have children who have great disabilities and have more autism, and I know of a few of those cases where the system isn't really geared to really helping them out. And this idea of always analysis is important, but what's more important is action. Yes, Alina. Yes, you want to come, is it? Yes, Alina. Yes, Alina. Daddy. Go play with the tablet while I do this, yeah? You know I'm talking about you, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. Go play with the tablet, Ninja. Yeah? So, that's the problem, is that the way the system is geared. And it's just... So I've written to my MP and councillor, and I'm sure they're not going to be able to give me any help, even though they have power to do it, and that's the whole point of them. But I'm sure they're not going to be able to fast track the system. They're just going to say, well, she's just going to have to go through that system. But the problem is children who are considered normal, i.e. non-disability and non-autistic, their funding has already been sorted out, because that's how the system works. How many children you get depends on the funding that the school gets. They have teachers based on how many kids they're going to have of normal ability. And therefore, that's the way they look at it. And then any other child who's disabled and autistic has to go through a plan where they then go through this analysis and then eventually request funding. And by that time, they've lost out so much time. And it's key with anyone. The beginnings of anything is the key stages. And obviously with someone with disability and autistic, they already have a problem with keeping up. And so you're not helping, you're making it worse by not having these things in place. If you can see, if you know you're going to have autistic and disabled children in your school for a new year, then already request that funding at the beginning, because you know they're going to need it. And everyone in that room said, yes, she needs an assigned person. Everyone said it. Everyone knows exactly what's needed. Those 3 tests that take over 3 terms are unnecessary and just a waste of time, just so we can fuck about with the system. But who's losing out here? The person who needs the help is losing out. And I just don't get it, because every school now has to have a SEND report. They have to follow these things. They have to be inclusive. They have to do all these things. And yet still, the mindset is still, when it comes to planning and funding, is still normal children, and then disabled and autistic children, either they go to a special school, or if they do go to a mainstream school, they have to apply for funding based on some kind of analysis by people who aren't even medically fucking trained. Sorry, I'm getting really angry, because it's somebody's life. Someone's depending on this. And I had to sort of say, no, I don't want her to not go. I want her to carry on going to school for the 6 hours, because I believe that the more time she's there, the more she will adapt, as she did at nursery school. But it just seemed that they were hell-bent on reducing her hours because they felt she was overwhelmed, where there was no evidence to suggest she was overwhelmed, just because she was stimming a little bit when she gets, it was a bit noisy, but they turned the TV down and then she was fine. And she always comes back happy, and the teacher never mentions anything other than, a few things. If a baby's crying, if the child is crying, she will go to attack them rather than console them because she doesn't understand it. But her autism is so mild compared to some children. Yeah, she doesn't communicate, but she hasn't been helped out by speech and language therapy, who are meant to be there and have never really been there. They came once during COVID, and despite iSend and other people, me, trying to get in contact with them, they never reply, they never get back. They haven't helped. I mean, even iSend them numerous times said they're going to contact Salt and try and get them on board, because she really needs speech and language. That's the one thing that autistic children struggle with, other than structure and forming bonds. And the nursery have done, it's strange that the nursery have done so well, and yet they have, I guess, the least funding. Yeah, they have small amounts of children, but obviously if it's being done correctly in nursery, why isn't it being done correctly in the primary schools, where it's so important, because that's the beginning of the proper education? And all this time she's losing out because they know she needs an assigned person, but there isn't one for her. I mean, and by the time they get it, it'll be the end of her reception going into year 1. So by the time she gets to year 1, she'll already be behind, even though she's already behind, because people with autism are often behind in things because their brains don't work in the same way. She's progressed so much since nursery. I can't give them a credit enough. The way that they handled Alina, they definitely helped her with potty training, helped her with eating, helped her with words, obviously also alpha blocks, number blocks, CBBS. They've done so much for my daughter. But when it comes to other institutions and the system, that's where it's failing. Because we know that children have disability and autism of different scales. And there's so many, there's not very many special schools. And I remember when she went to nursery, they said she could get a place in special school. She never got one in those 2 years because there was never any places available, because they take only a certain amount of children. And therefore, for them to sort of threaten us, that already mentioned about, after only 4 weeks, to sound like they're giving up, and they may, in the future, maybe they'll think whether she needs I just can't believe that they said it. It just seemed like so, I could hear the words they were using. They wanted me. They were trying to pressurize me with verbiage to make me capitulate to what they wanted, which I don't think was in the best interest with Alina, and which I don't think other members on that table, because there was a moment where it went completely quiet, because everyone didn't want to say it, that no, I don't think I think it's better that she stays there as long as possible, so that she does acclimatise to this new place, which she's not finding trouble. She doesn't cry, she goes there nicely, she walks in herself. In fact, her twin Adam, he's the one who's had a problem going there. He's the one who you could say had a problem. He didn't want to go there for the first week. He was crying every day, and he still, only this week, which is the 5th week, has he not been crying at the door to go in with a teacher. Every other day, nearly, he's been crying. He didn't want to go. He often says he doesn't want to go. He's the one who, as you could say, was maybe overwhelmed, and he's considered the normal one, where she goes nicely herself, and there's no crying, I don't see any kind of disturbance or any kind of problem that Alina's having, that she's expressing in any way, and the teachers are not telling us anything that is counter to that. So I just don't understand what the benefit of the school is to reduce her hours, why it would benefit them, or is it just because that's the way they can get the funding, by saying we've had to do this? I don't know if that's their mentality, because it doesn't make sense to me why you would want to reduce hours, because that would make her go even far behind. She's got used to the system of staying there for 6 hours, so only put her there for 3 hours. She's going to learn even less, and she's going to acclimatise even slower. So I don't understand, but to me it just seems this is the thing, as you go through life, you find these things, because obviously if I didn't have an autistic child, I never know about this. If I didn't have a disabled child, I never know about this. But the thing is, I hope that people listening to this, other parents of autistic and disabled children who live in the UK, all around the world, put down their experiences, make your video like this and attach it, or put the link in the comments, or put how it's been for you, because I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who's experiencing this issue, this problem, and I'm sure there's a lot of people experiencing far worse than this. And what's to be done about it? Because the problem is they, when you do say something, nothing gets done. I'm sure the MP and council is going to come back and say, well, there's a system in place, and you just have to follow that, basically, with a bit of, I'm sorry. And yet, so what's the point of having MPs and councillors if when you ask them for help, they can't help you? I'm not wanting Alina to be fast-tracked, because I talked about Alina. I want her funding to be there for her, because I know she's got a problem, and I'm the only one who can defend her, because she can't defend herself. And if those teachers in that room, and ISEND and etc., the coordinators, if they can't help, or they want to just follow this system that's just going to keep her behind when they know what she needs, I know I'm getting, my blood pressure must be so high. And this is like numerous, like every single place in life when you grow up and you hit these walls of things that don't make sense, and everyone else knows they don't make fucking sense, and yet everyone carries on with this. My child, based on the system, that's the problem. As I've talked on the Pursuit of Truth, if we didn't have money, if we had a better system that actually went for the benefit of humanity, we wouldn't have this problem. Because every child, we wouldn't need to apply for funding. We would just have the teachers come in. Because I know that sounds simplistic when I'm saying that, but the problem is that's what's causing this problem: money. Otherwise, they would have already had a teacher ready for Alina or whoever needs that help. But the system is the problem, as usual. Money is the problem. Our old ways of thinking about doing things, which we know don't work for everyone, we carry on doing them because they work for the majority. And the majority are who? Don't we care about everyone? Everyone should get the best life they can, and there's no need for everyone not to. So please put your comments. If you've got a disabled autistic child, put your comments of your experiences of, you know, the system, of your ideas. Make a video, put the link here, because I'm sure I'm not alone in this. And the thing is, a lot of people, I think they just give in. I mean, 10 years ago, before I woke up to all this, I would have just capitulated and said, yeah, you're right, I'll do whatever you say because you know what's right. Luckily now I'm not that person. I'm a person who can think for myself and question everything and stand up for myself and those that I love. But we all should be doing that. But I know there'll be a lot of people that don't. And a lot of people won't bother to write to their MP or their councillor or stand up because they feel that the person who has been entrusted with these things knows better. But the problem is it's not that they don't know better. It's not that they're doing it out of malice or any kind of it's because the system is the thing that narrows the decision process that they can make, because everything's about money, everything's about funding. Even with our own children and our own education, which doesn't benefit anyone to make anything connected to money. That's why I think that if you want to have fucking money, then yeah, you can have it. But it shouldn't be on education. It shouldn't be on healthcare. It shouldn't be on housing. It shouldn't be on the basics that would benefit humanity, like infrastructure on this place that we freely found ourselves upon with all this free stuff that we want to possess with power and money and control. Or maybe this is part of it. That's why those people in power who must have letters coming all the time and even have personal experiences of these things and all types of things where the system doesn't work, and yet they don't change it. We just keep the same system and make these little tiny changes that make no difference, so that everyone has to keep suffering over and over again. Or maybe it's just so that certain people always have that upper hand than others. I don't know. Please put your comments. Take care. Take it best. Peace.